When we are divided, we needlessly lose hundreds of thousands to a preventable global pandemic. Divided, we destroy our planet and fail to slow climate change. Divided, we put millions in the path of war, poverty, and injustice. Divided, we lose trust in each other. But when we come together, we can collaborate to solve our biggest global crises. Together, we can protect the planet for our children. Together, we can build a better future for everyone. Together, we can share our one world in peace. At this time of great need, we need each other now more than ever. Let's come together at OneShared.World.
Greetings to all. We're so happy to have you with us. I'm Jackie Davis, and I'm the co-chair of Arts and Culture for OneShared.World. The video you just saw was created as an expression of the hopes of all of those who are a part of OneShared.World, the organization that expresses the hope that we will all recognize our global needs and act accordingly in celebration of our interdependence. OneShared.World was created 2 years ago, dedicated to engaging a vast community to address the world's greatest existential challenges: systemic poverty, climate change, public health, with arts and culture as a centrifugal force that embodies and inspires our humanity. I think now more than ever, the arts can provide a way for people to grapple with difficult ideas and events and to take appropriate action to cause positive change. The arts provide a safe place for us to look at historical facts and current events and to define our own response, how to act in some way to affect positive change. For example, 10 extraordinary artists, including Sting, Youssou N'Dour, and Renee Fleming, to mention a few, have joined with OneShared.World as our global artists in endorsing these principles and in helping to spread the word about the work being accomplished by many members on a global level and as volunteers. Some of you will be hearing about during this upcoming panel. To learn more, please go to the website at OneShared.World. Now that's OneShared.World. And please sign the Declaration of Interdependence. Now to the program. In honor of World Water Day on March 22nd, today you will be hearing from exceptional women committed to the same values as OneShared.World. This event is co-organized by the Asia Society, OneShared.World, and the Bradema Center at New York University. We'd also like to thank our partners for today's program, whom you can find listed on the website. The other co-chair of Arts and Culture for OneShared.World is Rachel Cooper, Director of Culture as Diplomacy at the Asia Society. I'm pleased to welcome Rachel, who will be moderating this extraordinary panel. Rachel?
Thank you, Jackie. I think this really encapsulates so much of what we're all thinking about. And I do want to say at this time where I think we are all so concerned about the world, not only about the climate change, but the violence that is taking place in so many parts of the world, threatening people, and where, in fact, water is a scarce resource. People in Ukraine are literally having to go and find the snow to get water to drink just to stay alive. People in Syria are traveling across waters that are quite dangerous. People in Ethiopia and other parts of Africa are going through incredible droughts. The earthquake that just took place in Japan, and you think of tsunamis. The power of water is both the most positive, the idea of purity and holy water. It's something that has been revered for the entire history of humanity. And at the same time, we recognize that it is also one of the most dangerous, whether we have too much of it or we don't have enough. OneShared.World is really committed to finding ways to think about this for a world where we have to survive together. It's an existential situation that we're in. So I think some of the work that has been done by OneShared.World, in particular, I want to bring up the youth work, because it's the young people who are inheriting this earth and who are doing the work and have the vision. And there is an incredible campaign that is part of OneShared.World that brings together young people and their ideas to access safe drinking water, sanitation, hygiene, and protection from pandemics. So I encourage you to look at the work on the OneShared.World website. I wanted to reference the climate change scientist, Kim Cobb, who says, quote, "Science tells us that it is not too late, but we have to pull hard every day together to make a difference. You don't have to know where we're going to end up. You have to know what path we're on. And I would add, we have to know that we're on a path together." So today we will have 4 presentations by 4 remarkable visionaries. And I would say also that these 4 are presenting very powerful work, but there's incredible work going on across our globe. And I really hope that people will learn more about that as well. The format for today is that we'll have a presentation of something like 8 to 10 minutes for each artist or each arts project. And then we will come back together for a conversation to talk about how the arts can make a difference, how we work across sectors with scientists, with policymakers, and which I think really encapsulates, again, the vision of OneShared.World. So we're going to start, and then, oh yes, one more thing. I just want to say that we will all come back together for a conversation, and we encourage you to send your questions or thoughts. So you will have that function on your chat, and we have people who are taking those and will get those to us, those comments. So thank you so much. First person I would like to introduce to you is Viva Galhotra, an incredible visual artist who lives in Delhi and who has worked in sculpture, installation, photograph, site-specific work. She addresses the shifting topography of the world, radically transformed by climate change. And this is really at the heart of her work. She looks at consumerism, capitalism, globalization, and of course, water. And her inspirational work is one that has really touched me deeply. Viva, thank you so much for being with us today. And it looks like you might be muted.
Sorry. Thank you, Rachel, for this beautiful introduction, and thank you for actually connecting me to the OneShared.World. It's a great effort, and I'm glad to be part of this. Thank you, the whole team, for organizing this. And as Rachel mentioned, that I'm an artist based in Delhi, and today I'll be presenting some of my works here with you guys. Thank you, everybody, for being online in these, different times we live in. Otherwise, I would like to give my presentation in person. So today I thought, as the conversation is about water, and I work with many different, the elements as the fundamental elements, but water is the key element in my practice, which I'm working on from last 12 or 13 years. So I'll be sharing few of my works today with you from that practice. So it's a small presentation, but I might take longer than my time. So please stop me, Rachel, whenever my time is up. So my work is mainly driven by nature, climate change, and the anthropogenic issues of our time, where the vital role of natural resources and their prevention takes the central stage. In my quest to understand and thereby artistically manifest the complex nature human relationship, I take recourse to the personal experiences, traditional myths, folklore, and rituals on one hand, and the scientific research, post-humanistic philosophy, and literature on the other. Through my artworks, I try to create an immersive experience for the viewer to reflect on the history of life on the planet, and in more recent times, the assault upon the environment by the human beings. Undoubtedly, the most powerful species on the earth. Thus, the birth of epoch Anthropocene, or the age of human. I use many diverse mediums and materials in my work, from the natural to man-made, from the leaves to metal to concrete to the film and photography. Each body of work demands its own material and to present the issues it wishes to express. Being an artist, I like to explore different materials to keep the romance alive. So you'll see some of the works in some of the examples like how I use my material. So this is the first body of work which I wanted to kind of share with you, where I actually my journey with environment or the anthropogenic issue started from this body of work, where my relation to the river is very different, because from childhood I used to visit the river, for picnics and with my family, and the same river was super clean. The place I belonged to, Yamuna Nagar, and then I traveled to other places because my father was in a transferable job. So when I reached Delhi, when I migrated to Delhi almost 15 years back, when I saw the river, I was in shock because I never thought the river can look that dirty. It was a sewage rather than river itself. So it really pained me, and I started documenting the river, because this is one of the holiest river. As you know, in India, we give the status of living being to the rivers. So it was very hypocritic for me to see the river's condition, where the whole city's residential and the industrial affluent fall into the river. So it was really, really painful. So for 2 years almost, I documented this river. And as on the screen you see, no, go back, go back. So as on the screen, on the left-hand side, you see a guy who's taking the holy bath in this river, which is contaminated, which is polluted. And I went and spoke to him, and he didn't speak to me because he was in prayer mode. So once he finished his prayers, then he came to me and he said, "How the hell you called my mother dirty?" That was the moment I was left in this theater of absurd, where I thought, okay, I need to do something about this river. Go to the next slide, please. So I took my canvases and I took my other materials to the riverbed, and I wanted to work at the river and perform at the river itself. So this is what you see, the sludge out of the river. So I call this body of work sediment and other unpacked metals. So go to the next, please. This body of work transformed in the gallery spaces like that, but it was performed at the riverbank to to initiate the dialogue with the people who were around the river and they were living in that space. So that dialogue shifts from the public space to the to the white cube space, and it's a different conversation. But I think being an artist, this is what I can do, and I initiate dialogue at these two spaces. Yeah, go to next, please. So further from this, furthering in this body of work, I did this work, consumed contamination, because the river carries its pollutants and the all the pollutants to the Bay of Bengal. So it's a more than 400-kilometer way to reach to Bay of Bengal. So it carries the whole contamination. So contaminate all the banks around. So the agricultural land around, which produces this kind of the food. And generally around the river, they've been producing the food which is carrying the most water content. So these are the vegetables like gourd, pumpkins, cauliflower, cabbage. So these are the vegetables which carries the most amount of arsenic, as per the scientist says. So this is what I thought I need to kind of freeze my time in here. So that's why I frozen these into the raisin, the actual vegetables. Yeah, go to the next, please. I'm a little fast in my speech because I know the time is short. So these are the different displays, displays of the same work. Go to next, please. Yeah, this is how it goes to different places and different displays. Yeah, next, please. And this is another film work which summarizes the whole issue of the city and its and the river's condition. In this film, the Manthan is basically a take on Vishnu Puranic myth, one of the myth. So it was. So I wanted to kind of meet somewhere where I bring the traditional knowledge or maybe the traditional belief system to the contemporary situation. So that's why I thought I need to take a plot from the past and contemporize it. So the Vishnu Purana story goes like this: that in the full collaboration between the gods and demons, they churn the sea to find the life nectar out of the sea. So but in the contemporary situation, I am churning the sludge out of the river. Go to next slide, please. So these are some of the shots from the video. I can't show you the video because we have short time, but if you want to see the video, it's on Vimeo. It's Bhagalputra, and the film's name is Manthan. Go to next slide, please. So these are some of the shots. Next, please. Yeah. So you see the contaminated water is coming from the big drains to the riverbed, and then yeah, it's mixing with the actual water. Go to the next, please. And this is one of my favorite project which I did with Asia Society, and I really thank Asia Society to kind of believe in my project and facilitate this project at New York. So this is a moving project. This is kind of a project in continuation. Who owns the water? It's a very direct question which I'm asking. So it brings in the political, economical, and social questions. From place to place, it changes. So in New York, we did talk about bigger questions about the whole politics around the natural resources, especially water, and how it has been, kind of considered by the lawyer lobby, by the public policy makers. So in this project, which was public participatory project, and it was a dinner organized to create this very humble conversation by with the intellectual or the practitioners who work in this direction of water. Next slide, please. So you see this dinner table design, and where I have designed each and everything to nudge the question, to nudge the conversation about water. Go to next slide, please. So it's an audio visual project which was having 20 participants, from environmentalists to academicians to artists to fishermen to different people who actually conversed about the water, that how we can improve the situation of water, and how, without pointing a finger to each other. So the food was designed in such a way that it nudges some questions to the participants. Next, please. Yeah, so here you see Bahar also, who's presenting soon. Go next, please. Yeah, next. I think my time ends here as I see the messages here. So this is how the whole team has worked on this project. It was a wonderful experience to listen to the practitioners about the solution, how we can improve the situation of the water. So I think I end my presentation here, and we go to the conversation further. Bye.
Thank you, Vibha. I think you have posed the crucial question, which is who owns water? who owns the water? And the idea that you even could own water is such a huge idea. But then who owns responsibility for water comes into play when we talk about that. So thank you. And we'll come back and have a chance to really explore this in a little bit more conversational mode. I'd like to now introduce Susie Ibarra. We're going to a very different kind of practice in terms of music and sound, the world of sound, and how do we listen to water? How do we listen to each other, really? Susie Ibarra is a Filipinx composer, percussionist, sound artist. We have worked with her over many years. She's an interdisciplinary artist who has also worked with scientists and other social scientists and communities, and really sees her practice as part of not only an individual artist approach, but one that's quite collective, particularly her water rhythms and listening to climate change. But her earlier work with fragility, which I think we're talking about a world that really does encompass a kind of fragility. And that's really the work that we're all coming together to think about and how we can actually try to find solutions. Susie, over to you. We can't hear you. Can you unmute?
Hi. Thank you, OneShared.World, and thank you, Rachel Cooper, for having me. I'm delighted to be here today with all of you artists, advocates, and everyone in the community to discuss this. And I had a question. Were you going to play it first, the performance video? I didn't know.
So Susie, this is an amazing juxtaposition. We've gone from you as a musician and the beautiful music that you're creating through percussion to you recording the sounds of water. Could you tell us a little bit about that transition and your work with water in its various forms, whether those are frozen or flowing or
Yes.
shared?
Yes. I am both a composer, performer, and also a sound artist. I started field recording not just the environment, but also traditional communities and traditional artists. And it was really a natural involvement that I started to record directly nature and the environment. I've worked on different water projects, and it focuses on different aspects. In the Philippines, we deal more with the flooding and the tsunamis. It could be from the landslides, the glacier melts, to also desertification. Now I'm working with anti-desertification in desert cultures too. I think it's just something that's been very natural that, we all are these people that have all these different parts of us. I happen to be an artist, but water is certainly essential. And the project that I'm going to share today, or two of them, this first one, Water Rhythms, Listening to Climate Change, is a collaboration with one of the scientists that I collaborate with. Dr. Michelle Copes, who's a glaciologist, climate scientist, geographer, and geomorphologist. And we really wanted to tell a sonic story, to ask people to listen and to embody that sound, to listen to the story of our lifeblood, which is the lifeblood of the earth and also the lifeblood of us as people. About 3% of the earth is freshwater, and 99% of that comes from ice and glaciers. So it is directly affected from how the landscapes are changing from the glacier melt. And we are collecting a memory of this time and also inviting people to share their connection and to water. Right now we have been mapping 5 water towers. The Greenland ice sheet, North America, Northwest Coastal Mountains, and Blackcomb Glacier, Bridge Glacier, Easton Glacier, and we will be going up this summer to the Canadian Rockies and the First Nations communities to document one of the longest rivers in North America, the Fraser River, which I think is about as long as the Ganges River, it's like 1,200 miles. And the Ganges, which I was very happy on one of my trips that Viva was with me in Varanasi and Benares. And we are waiting because of the pandemic and landslides, climate, to go up to Uttarakhand and sacred Gangotri Glacier and Satopanth. And now, as we see a lot of the conflict in the world, we are on hold also, as we are planning to collaborating with Mongolian Cultural Council to record Lake Kufskul in Mongolia and the Tul River in Ulaanbaatar, which has been, the nomadic culture has been directly affected by a lot of the capitalism, and which has polluted that river a lot. But Lake Kufskul is still, they say, is known as the second purest lake of freshwater still today. So
one of the things that's so amazing, Susie, in this work, and I just want to reiterate it, is that you're listening to water. Yeah. You're hearing the environment. You're hearing the world, as it were. And you're asking people to listen in new ways.
Yes. Yes, I think listening is such a valuable tool and so necessary. I mean, if we think about what is going on today in the world, are we listening to each other? Are people listening? Why are we in all of these situations? They have a capacity to listen. That is a definite capacity and tool that is necessary to learn and be taught. So that's a big part of my practice and why I do this and why I love to field record and do sound art. I love to listen. And it was a very deliberate choice that Michelle and I had for this particular project, that we wanted people to stop and listen, even though it's driven very much, we're in a very visual world, because it is another sensory experience. And sometimes if it's not something that's been developed for a long time, you might just need to focus on that, just to be able to do that. So I started to field record on this project. We're documenting source to sink, but because of the climate, we're not necessarily literally in that chronological order documenting that. So, but we are documenting source to sink from the top of the glacier melt out down to the rivers, and then when it opens up into the sea. And you have this whole melt. It starts from the ice melting and underneath, and then you've got all of these air bubbles and sediment that come down through the rivers. And all of these sounds, pitch changes, can tell you how land has shifted. And the more and more I field recorded, what was so amazing, Rachel, is that it really was so precise, the music. You think, oh, this is an environmental recording, it's ambient. But when I started to do the transcriptions, it was very precise, these rhythms, and what the rhythms were, what the BPM and the tempos were. And it seemed we're just writing music all over the world, popular music.
Can we listen to a little bit of this before we have to move on?
We can listen to, this is a part of a video that was with a surround sound installation, and this just shares some of the water recordings that I've combined together. And
so you're asking us as an audience to listen.
Yes. So those, you can hear, those are actually whales off of Greenland that you're hearing, some of those, some of the sounds. And it's wonderful when you can hear also some of the species. And if you want to actually map the project on water rhythms, you can go to Nat Geo's Esri Maps, and that'll take you on the map. You can press onto the points and see the specific field sites and stuff.
That's great. Nat Geo is National Geographic.
Yes, sorry.
For those of you who want to explore this, let's just take 15 seconds to see a little bit. Give us the really short version of the Sahara project, because it's so exciting, and then we'll get a chance to talk a little bit more when we get into the conversation.
Okay, so I have been a few years in collaboration with the music school Jeu du Sahar and Mohamed El Ghizlan in the South Sahara, Morocco, the Dra Valley. And I also work with the NGO Playing for Change Foundation, which now I'm also helping by recording and presenting artists. And they want me to do this in 20 other schools in Africa and Asia. So right now I'm working in Africa, in Morocco, and in Kirina, outside of Bamako in Mali, and also at Tamale in the north of Ghana. So this is in South Sahara, Morocco, and this is actually a project, a new composition. I'm also personally working with the girls, the students who are leaders. This is a gender development focused project on water. They are telling the story of the climate, the importance of water in the desert, and the effort of anti-desertification at the moment, and also the stories. They're both recording the sounds, and they are interviewing the families and communities of their stories about the climate. And so I started on the field recording. They have, I'll be back in May with them, but they are with their teachers, and they record every weekend. So this is where they're planting trees. It's a process. They're planting them with boxes, because if you plant them just direct in the desert, it's very difficult. And so this weekend, when they were planting about 200 trees, as
that's great.
Building a new school, and this is, I think, one of the sounds.
And this took place last week. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we're in process right now. So this is
okay. All right, let's see that 15 seconds.
Okay.
Just to give us a taste. Too short, but very inspiring. Thank you so much. And we'll be back. So I'm now delighted to share with you the wonderful artist Bahar Behbahani and her work, which is incredibly inspiring. Bahar is a painter, a collaborator, an educator, and she says, hospitable instigator. Now that's a good term. She was born and raised in Iran, resides and works in New York. her work is really complex, and I'm sure she will talk about, but I love this quote of all water has perfect memory, which it has come from a larger quote from Toni Morrison from her essay of the site of memory. But the idea of water having memory in the flow is one that we rarely think about. And it's so great to have you sharing this work and your hospitable instigation.
Thank you, Rachel, for this introduction. It's so empowering to be in this beautiful group of people, artists, and creative-minded advocate for water and for other issues that is related to water. It's just really amazing and inspiring to look at Susie and Vipa's work and how we overlap sometimes. And I think it's very important to see like the whole cohorts that they're doing in different ways the same work, and it's really empowering. So thank you for having me. I have a feeling that when we talk about climate change and when we're looking for a solution to climate issues, we need to feel it in a personal and intimate ways. So experience it without our personal sphere is kind of like hard for me as an artist to work anything. So that's why I think it's important for me to always remind me that where I come from and what is my relationship with water. So I thought like I share with you like a image of the aerial view of the Persian garden. This is like south of Iran. It's a very arid area. And it's really, for me, it's just like when we're talking about Persian gardens, we're talking about water. We're not just talking about like any garden, right? With this topology, with this climate, with this extremity, it is historically connected to everything, the land and water beneath our feet, agriculture, natural and urban relationships. I really think like when we're talking about like Persian gardens in this context, in the larger image, we're talking about like individual and public health, equity and access, colonization, climate, displacement, labor, craft. Maybe I have like another picture, if you go to the next, that how in this picture that we can see there is no water around, but the labor, the love, the dedication, the intricate craft and ancestral wisdom brings the water from miles away to this place to make the garden and to make the vitality for many people. So with this time frame or mind frame, when I come and migrate to New York, to a place that is surrounded with water, and then I'm working as an artist, which, by the way, I'm a painter, but recently I shifted to more to the public realm. And the reason that I think I'm shifting to the public work more and more is because of the longing for this kind of being among the community and working together in a more non-binary, interdisciplinary way of working to find like some gray areas, some overlap areas where we meet in this between. So on the next slide, I will show you through this journey. I don't say anymore next slide because it's the whole flowy thing. This is the work, All Water Has a Perfect Memory, as Rachel, you said. It's also inspired by Toni Morrison. And really, like when I got invited to work and focus on Hudson River, because this is in the Bronx, this is on the Wayfield Garden with the mesmerizing view of Hudson River. So coming from what I showed you, what I immediately thought about that is like what this river means to the people in the Bronx or in New York in a broader thing. And then I think it's really important for me to think about when we think about like the ecology of river, we cannot miss the ecology of people. Like river for me is waterway, as a transplanted person. So the community of surrounding the local people is as important as the tons of accumulated research that I do in my studio in the anticipation of doing the work. So I listen to the community and I see like what I can make that is not just a piece of art, but it's more like a placemaking. It's more like an excuse to bring people together to talk about like other issues. So while they were expecting me maybe when they commissioned me to work on an about Hudson River, and it was about like ecology of Hudson River and all, but I couldn't just really not to see the beautiful invisible journeys that immigrants and brown and black bodies went through body of water. So immediately I thought like I have to make a raft, and that's the result of that work. And it's very important for me to put together like all the other pedagogical aspects of the work. So it's, as you see, like there are like many other artists, many other readings, many other programming that involves like it's really like a multi-generational community. Again, like the work is just an excuse to bring up like other issues around the as you see, that kid is just like pointing on underwater the system. So how can I just bring the attention for people to just really go through that journey, that where the water comes from, what is the accessibility, what is that? And it's really interesting to listen to Susie talking about like a listening, like that the moment of the listening, how can we just bring people to a place that they have like the presence of being, just being for 1 minute with a river might just actually the solution to understand the climate better. And I would love to continue the conversation on that. What this project is also like, it's a technology based, is maybe like for more like a young generation that they are more technology savvy. So it's got a QR code. Everybody can come to this gazebo, and it's about like 8 rivers, that these 8 rivers are, which one of them is Ganges actually, Mississippi and Nile, Euphrates, Rio Grande. They're all like carrying not only the spiritual weight, but also like historical weight, but also like a joy, but also sorrow. So how can we just sit and get immersed in all these aspects of water that connects us, but also separates us? Similarly, when I got invited to Lahore, and I did a project in Lahore that we can also like see this image, I think might be just the next slide, that the reason that I brought this work is also because the shape is similar to the shape that I made in Lahore. And I think like emphasizing on this kind of like a shape that it's octagon, it goes back to the spiritual and cosmological and many other cultural references. And this is about Ravi River in Pakistan, in Lahore, which actually Ravi River is a vitality of Kashmir and Pakistan, but also is sharing with India. It's a lot of complex story. And for that, it was really, really great opportunity and experience for me, that working with the actual irrigation department of Punjab in Lahore. And that is when I realized that the Biennale, the contemporary art world, the galleries, the museums, they are all just an excuse and a good opportunity for the artists, for us, for creative-minded people, people that they are open-minded, that they come together, and together we can do something brainstorming around drought, around flood, around the around the issues that really like it touches everybody, and it's important, and it's like the blood of the place sometimes. So for this project, I knew that Ravi River is the
ऐसा कुछ बना
फॉर कश्मीर
कश्मीर
ये कश्मीर के लिए ये कह रहे हैं कि he says that you can make a leaf for Kashmir.
That's great. Thank you, Bahar. Bahar, can you unmute? Thanks.
sorry.
That's okay. Just one last quick question. I know you have a project of meditations coming up at the Asia Society. So can you take 30 seconds and just tell people about it, and then we can talk about that.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for bringing it up. With all these community engagement, public work, with the COVID happens, we were all like asking, now what? How can we go to the public if it's not even like, like possible, or what we can do? So as a meditative way, I think like many artists, I was locked for during the COVID and only with my drawing thing. So I started to doing like drawing about water and doing like some series of monoprints that is around like again 8 rivers in the world that they are wounded by coal mining and the oil drilling. And because it's again my relationship with oil industry and water scarcity is always like very connected. So these are like 8 videos. Each video is 1 minute, and it's inviting people every day for 8 days to just come and meditate on a river while they're watching this video of my monoprints that is like about the rivers, river elephants in South Africa and other rivers. And it's collaboration with musicians, Afropolka, Magic Shaybal, that they improvised with the video. And also Tara Ahmadinejad, the theater artist, collaborated and improvised while she was watching the video and listening to the music. She was inspired with 8 poet females from around the world and reading some text on it.
Thank you so much, Bahar. All 3 of the artists that we have just shared online are engaged in ways that I think are really quite powerful. And they're all asking us to engage with them as part of a larger community. And it's not just for the arts or the scientists or the policymakers. It's really about how we come together. I recently heard somebody say, well, the world is some of the things happening in the world today is unimaginable. What is the role of the artist? It's to imagine. It's to imagine the other options. So I think that's quite in keeping with what we're trying to do. And I'm very excited to have Letitia Badolo with us today. And I think her work is really specific about how do we make change? How do we reach people? Her work in Dakar with the NIEL, which is her NGO, is really quite powerful. And I just want to say her title is the Senior Advocacy Officer. I love that your advocacy is right there. It's very clear. And then how you engage with artists to bring those messages is so deeply moving. So I'd love you to talk a little bit about your work and some of those campaigns. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you also for this opportunity to share our work and to share also how arts mean to us and how arts is translated in all the work we are doing in Africa. So as Rachel said, so we are Miel, so a campaign and advocacy firm. So we are based in Dakar, and for us, art is our identity in Africa. If you some of you knows Africa, art for us is it's who we are. And at Niel also, we make sure that in the different campaigns, in the different advocacy work that we does, art is translated, and it will always be the case. So on the different campaigns that we are doing, we want to ensure at each steps that art it represents, because for us also art is the easiest and the most relatable way to engage citizens. And by engaging citizens, we've been able to also influencing the practices and also at the policy level influence the policies. So slide, please. And based on the issue we are discussing right now, water, so we have been engaged in sanitation, water, and hygiene since 2017. And through this advocacy initiative, we engaged several artists because for us, because of the nature of sanitation, it was important for us to break this barrier and make sanitation more close to people than it is right now. So the previous slide that we just shared was a forum that we organized where we gathered 12 artists that work with cities with young citizens to develop different artwork. It went from graffiti, from slam, from journalism, from theater, and one major output from this workshop was these images. So it's a graffiti that they design, they draw themselves that represent for them what is sanitation. And part of the campaign also, we developed a comic book that was intended directly to decision makers. So in this idea to raise sanitation profile, to raise wash profile, it was important to break down those barriers and not on only uh, specific or technical word on sanitation, so that sanitation do not remain only for policymakers, only for private sector, or only for MTers who work every day on sanitation. So we produced this comic book that we called Our Poop Stories. That it's a comic book that talk about what our poop means to us. And we all poop. And this is what we wanted to set at the first time. We all poop. So there is no way we can't discuss about it because it's us before it comes to a policy way discussion, before it comes to a financing or funding discussion. So through this comic book, we tell the story of a family that is living under the poop. So these first images, for example, were around all the bad behaviors related to water and sanitation. So you see here a dad who is throwing his trash in his house. The toilet is not well closed. There is no sanitation in it. Next slide. The other one was more around all the difficult part in understanding sanitation in its management. So sanitation has these, and water also has all those value chain to ensure the efficiency and the good management of that. But sanitation remains difficult even in its understanding. So this is what we highlighted here. Next. Here it was the direct link of poor sanitation and poor health. And the most affected person and target in sanitation are our kids. So if you don't know, for example, more than 1,000 kids die every day because of lack of sanitation. They die from diarrhea because of lack of sanitation. So we wanted here to raise the fact that sanitation is directly linked. And if our kids die, I don't know how our tomorrow will be. Next. This one was around the fact that, yes, it's poop, but poop can be transformed. Poop can be reused into more efficient output, which can be fertilizer, which can be energy, we can be electricity, we can be building agents. Next. And there is this one where we directly point out our decision maker. They have a lot of policies. They do discusses. You call them, they will say yes, yes. But in reality, it remains dirty and poop for us. They need to step up, and all those words that they are saying, they need to put them into action. And this is what we wanted to raise here. Next. One major part also on sanitation remain the exclusion of girls and exclusion of women also. If you know, for example, 80% of the water work is done by women. And also related to sanitation, when girls, for example, have their period, they lack school, they miss school, sorry, and they can't grow as men, for example. So this is part also of what we are doing. I know Rachel want to share a song that we produced last year, where we gather some artists from the previous campaign that we did and I already talked about, and they work together to define and produce some lyrics guided by us with a producer, and we want from scratch, and each of them produce with their own words how sanitation mean for them and what is the unified call to action.
Before we go to the sanitation anthem, I just want to say to you that these images are so powerful. They speak to everybody. And you can get, we often forget how much humor and can humanize us. And saying, yeah, even those politicians, they poop. And, and you've, I think, addressed some major issues, but in ways that feel very safe to discuss. Like, you don't have to be uptight or, even something like women menstruating, to be able to say, hey, this is really affecting us. We need solutions. And this isn't just, over half the population doing something in private. This is not so private. This is about us all coming together. So I think your campaign is really incredible.
Thank you.
I think we all have a lot to learn about it and learn from it. And maybe now, so that's, a very different kind of campaign than bringing all the popular musicians together to sing about sanitation. So set us up. Let's share that. Let's go out with that.
Right from the gutter, we call upon the powers. Our home is shattered, and we've done to waste our waters. Wood is shed, we've got but ourselves to blame. All these diseases don't make life easy. Better sanitation for Africa's nations. We want solutions from those who make decisions.
نرى الناس كيموت بالجوع النص الاخر بلي مالادي مشيتش نغني جيت نقول لا راه ما راديش كليت ولا افريك رديتو بلادكم بارادي قلت الماء الصحاب دونجي سي صالافي والامي بغيت حقي انا بغيت الزواق بغيت فلوس بغيت حقي انا والامي بغيت غير نعيش انا بغيت الصحه نعاود نقولها بغيت حقي انا بغيت غير نعيش انا نعيش انا بغيت حقي انا
Sanitation is a human right, so we got to fight with all our might. We changes for a billion faces.
N'écoute pas que la mélodie, mais les paroles qui t'éviteront la maladie. Il faut agir avec la mort, on ne négocie, car si je coule là, tu coules aussi. Pollué par les déchets des toilettes et fosses septiques, l'eau source de vie pourrait à présent nous être toxique. Sans une gestion des bouts de vidange optimale, je crains fort que le nombre de malades augmente à l'hôpital. 700 enfants de moins de 5 ans meurent chaque année de diarrhée. Et c'est alarmant ce manque d'assainissement. Dilay tout bin borda, bahwe kenga yina, tiye wajni bonsa. Hey, n'écoute pas que la mélodie, mais des paroles qui t'éviteront la maladie. Il faut agir avec la mort, on ne négocie, car si je coule, tu coules aussi.
Como hepatitis, não há água para beber sem saneamento otimizado. Estamos todos preocupados com as doenças no continente. Febre tifoide fora, vermes intestinais fora. Não há água potável, não há tratamento do nada.
That is amazing. All four of you are so inspiring, and I think we have an opportunity to start thinking about how all of us across this small globe that we call home can work together. And the inspiration from each of these presentations comes together. It's almost like that mosaic that Bahar has. We're coming together where it's about listening, it's about dancing, it's about reaching our common humanity and finding the empathy that really is something that the arts can do in a way that other disciplines can be very pedantic and give you a lot of facts and figures. They don't make you rock out. They don't have you thinking about having dinner together, as in who owns the water in that project. And also for all of you, I noticed that you bring in scientists, policymakers, other people on every level. So from kids to young people who are listening to music in a different way, to the policymakers who are coming together over a meal, to listening to the water. And I think all of you have touched on different approaches. I would love to hear from each of you how we go forward to make a difference and using art practice, whether it's your own or other people's, to really try to instigate hospitable instigation when we can, but to see how we can come together. And I'd like to start with you, Viba. Unmute, all of you.
Yeah. I'm audible?
You are.
Thank you. Thank you, Letitia. It was such an amazing and moving song you guys have produced. It's amazing. I think we all should use that. And it's a great example to answer your question, Rachel, that, to bridge a gap, between the masses, people who are not aware about the issue, and people who can think. We can visually, connect with people easily rather than, giving them a bookish knowledge or a data or research. So, this is the way we visual artists can penetrate into the public spaces, like Bahar has done, like I have done into the, like Susie is doing. So I think this is the way of reaching out to people rather than, showing them heavy data or, giving a text, which is very, in a way is very sad to read in, because once people read these stories of war or climate change, it makes people sad. But, through visual, we can create some hope. That's what we are trying to do, I think. Yeah.
Susie, how about from your standpoint? I mean, I think you are imagining a different kind of pathway.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, going back to listening, I mean, there's so many pathways that we can have, like tributaries of rivers, and really needing to listen. What are the needs? And understanding in the moment, what are the possibilities that are roads to solutions? So it's nuanced, right? It's not like a cookie cutter situation. Every situation has different needs. But the power of art to be able to elevate that, to be able um, to have a personal experience, I think in a compelling way that is really important. Yes, to have the hope, but also to bring them to have that experience of empathy, of why is this happening, the balance of that, and it's a very powerful language.
Bahar, we talked a little bit about the power of music in water, in Persian gardens. So it's not only visual, the experiencing of the water is multi-sensorial.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really think like the way that I work, I sometimes I sit in my studio and I think like, okay, who am I that I want to say something or make something? So I can't literally imagine myself without the ancestral wisdom, without the knowledge holders, without the indigenous lineage. So I'm constantly trying to not only connect myself with that knowledge, with that wisdom, and think about like how can we translate that or bring it pragmatically to today to see what we can do as a contemporary issues that we have. And something that Leticia said that I really it touched me that I'm dealing with it. I'm sure every of you that yes, 1,000 children days every day there in Senegal, I guess, lack of sanitation, and humor helps to humanize us, you said. And that's really, really empowering and beautiful. So I think that always brings me to the question for myself that who's the public? Who's the public that I'm working for? And as Susie said, like each situation demands like different approach, meaning maybe different medium. Maybe one is sound, one is technology, one. So it's really like we should go back genuinely and a little bit maybe being vulnerable even when we work in public to see to listen first to environment, and then how as artists, as Susie said, translate those joys, spirituality, beautifulness, but also not to forget the empathy and the urgency of what's happening.
You know, the idea of one shared world. It's one world and we're sharing it. And, you know, sometime in history, people came up with this idea of nation states, and we could debate that at another time. But the water is shared, the air is shared. If we're going to survive, it's about working together. And one of the things that really hits me about the collective group of all of you is that it's aggregated. It's that work all adds up to something that's more than any one piece. There's some kind of a collective vision that I find is really a powerful and one that I think underscores the kind of network of community that we're talking about. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about other ways that artists can work with and help to affect change with their counterparts in other disciplines. whether that is scientists or policymakers, or if there are ways that we can help people to better understand, and maybe that understanding is what you were just saying, Bahar, the kind of empathy. It's not just a head understanding, but it's a deeper emotional interaction. And Letitia, I'd like to ask you first what your thoughts are, because you have such experience here.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. And if I may just correct, for the thousand of children, it's in the world, it's not in Senegal. But around your question, it's we just launched in December a fellowship program called Clap Assainissement. So clap like the clap when we do movies, because we wanted, still linked to art, we wanted to document and showcase what sanitation means for young people. And we launched this fellowship just to select 10 young artists that will tell us through a documentary what sanitation means for them. And in doing that, it was not only just, okay, go and tell us how sanitation means for you, but how us Miel can support you in even guiding you what is sanitation, because sometimes you can have your idea of sanitation, but how can we build your capacity to ensure that you have the means to now see with better eyes what is sanitation. So we are just in a training with them. So they with you might know them, Apolline Traore, which is a huge and phenomenal artist in Burkina. So she's a filmmaker and she won several of trophy on cinema, and she's training them on producing how to produce a good documentary. What is all the different sequences that you need to master to be able to produce this documentary. So they are in a training currently in Burkina, and after that, and they are from 10 countries. After that, they will go now in the different countries and do the filming process. Try to tell us what sanitation means for them. And then we go after in all those mounting process. And at the end, we will have 10 powerful documentaries to support our advocacy work. So this is how we are trying to see and still have this dynamic and joint collaboration with artists, but at the same time, they need to keep in mind that we have this advocacy change to achieve together.
So it's important to know what each of you is doing now. Thank you, Letitia, for talking about what's coming up. And I think that would be actually a great question for all of you, because I know you have mentioned projects that are coming up, but it would be wonderful if you would be able to just say a little bit more about your next project and ways that people can interact with you and get to know your work a little bit more. Bahar, could you go next?
Yes, sure. So as I a little bit mentioned about how the whole thing organically happened to me first during the COVID, to think about like what can I do in a public sphere while I can't maybe go to public in person. And and for so many people it's problematic still to go to in person. So how can we be together virtually, but in a different way? So it's not just like a Zoom. It's not just so I was just brainstorming on that. And as I was just always like water brings peace also for me. So I was doing like a series of monoprints and drawings on waterways and water. But at the same time, again, I cannot ignore what's happening around this body of waters. What is the pollution that is it's producing by coal mining and extraction and oil rigs? And what can I do with that? Okay, I'll make like beautiful paintings and monoprints and drawings, but like, how can I just share that it's not only about that, and how we can say, okay, the coal mining is really bad, but like, how bad? How can we translate that urgency, or how bad it is? What is that translation in the piece of art? So I was like, I can invite people to come and meditate on the piece. And of course, again, I'm like, okay, I'm not enough. I need collaborators. But again, it's COVID time. Maybe we don't collaborate. Maybe we collaborate with greatest poets that they're not around, but we can get inspired. And continuation of Toni Morrison's piece, I just added other poet females. The piece is called Mother River, which is also another name of the Yellow River in China, which is the most polluted river because of the coal mining, and one of the number one producer of coal in the world. So I'm hoping that people can join. It starts in April 12th, and every day we have one river to sit with it.
So this is announced on the Asia Society website, I assume.
Yes, the platform on Asia Society. Yeah. So it's also like I wanted to try as an artist to see like how I can give agency to the river itself. So it's a little bit of a collaborative enterprise for me, how we can translate that, how we can just not to talk about ourselves and from our point of view, and what's the memory of Yellow River.
I mean, what's interesting in all of your presentations is that I think there's some allusion to cultural heritage and to the history. You know, we're not only living in our own time, there is a relationship to the past. And in order to imagine the future, you have to carry the past, you know, some aspect of that. There's a continuum that we have to deal with. So I think, you know, the fact that you're talking about these poets from the past. I mean, the fact that music video had so much culture in it. Susie,
also interconnection between the rivers. You know, as Wipa was showing, like the slides of still of her video, and talking about that, the spiritual sacred holiness of that river, and then it gets polluted. I don't think that anything is isolated. That ecosystem is part of the ecosystem of all of us.
Absolutely true. That is so clear. And of course, Viva's images really bring that home, because you see the painfulness, particularly with that holy man who is there, and he's calling it his mother. Like, how are you? You know, there are often these cognitive dissonances of the purity of the water that is believed in, and the reality of a polluted water source that means so much to everyone, both in spiritual and in physical terms. Viva, do you want to say something on that?
Yeah, you know, in India we believe, or the Vedic philosophy believes that yattinde brahmande. So that means what exists in the microcosm, it exists in the macrocosm. So what exists in the universe, it exists in everything what we have. So to that, I think if we believe in that philosophy, so there has to be a mergence of the past and the present, and how we can sustain the world comes from that indigenous knowledge together. So, you know, science is not only the answer, but with science, we have to kind of, you know, look into the past and indigenous knowledge. Intuition is taking a backseat in the present day scenario. So I think we intuitively understand the environment, you know, all of us, we have that power, but we have, you know, kind of forgotten that. So now I think through this kind of art practices, are trying, you know, we intuitively bring the world together, like the one shared world. So I believe doing a little step, as we say, thoda thoda in Hindi. So, we are slowly trying to do that. Yeah.
So I just want to finally end with, I'm going to ask you, Susie, one of the things Bahar brought up, we're all, the pandemic has made us quote unquote virtual and hybrid at the same time. And we'll probably never be the same. We'll be both. What really strikes me in this panel is that we are really working across the globe and that each of you is also doing that. Susie, your work, whether it's in the Himalayas or in Morocco and with different communities. I think that has really become a core. So I would like you to just give us one more thought about where you're going on your path, your next piece, and then I'm going to unfortunately have to wrap it up.
Okay. Well, I did share, excuse me, a little bit about stories of the Muhammad Oasis. I guess since we're wrapping, I just wanted to also say, really, it's about a larger idea. What I'm definitely committed to working on, and it is about 7 generations, or if we talk about generational wealth, it's our environment. What is that? What is the focus on that? And we're paving for that for not just our families and communities, but for the larger communities. I mean, this is of importance, right? Of how everyone and like all species are living on the planet. This is what the wealth is, which will hold it. So it's really a focus of that. I'm trying to help support the younger generations to have their voice in it, and who don't have voices yet. So I think also to one of your other questions, focusing on that's a way that you can bring in a lot of people from different sectors, from different careers, to understand we need to nurture and support our younger generations. It's not just the next one, but it's generational. And it is a way of inviting everybody into a dialogue that comes from different backgrounds and different careers and sectors.
I love that, we're inviting everyone into the conversation. This isn't one conversation, it's a larger community building engagement. And I also love that you've brought up the younger generation. As I mentioned before, our acronym PAP, but it's water, sanitation, public health, pandemics, all that we're living through. And in OneShared.World, I think there are hundreds of young people who have come together to make a challenge. And I encourage you to look at the website of OneShared.World and to get involved. Sign our interdependence pledge. Join us. We have new programs coming up that look at how we are living in a shared world from a variety of different directions. Soon we're going to have something on the metaverse, on public health, on women leaders, and business in the world. That's through OneShared.World. With my other hat on, at the Asia Society, we have a very large exhibition and initiative at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. called Coal Plus Ice. Coal and Ice. It's a photo exhibition. It will be concerts. It's dialogues. Again, we have a very vibrant and dynamic website. Many of the things are online. So, those of you who are in other parts of the world or can't get to DC this week, next week, or the week after, doesn't matter. You can be involved. And that's true of all of the projects and all of the artists that we have met today, because everyone has a website. There are ways for you to learn more, and that's what I encourage you to do. And there's, of course, many more artists and creative people who are creating ways to connect and address some of these very same issues. So I think the challenge for all of us is, how can we work together, across this small earth And even in times where it seems so dire, it is so tragic in many parts, I think it's by coming together and staying on the path. We don't know what the end result will be. And, one day it looks pretty terrible. And another day you see more hope. But I think that it's only by working together and having the imagined pathways that we're going to be able to make the change that we're hoping for. So I want to thank all of you for being a part of the program, and hope that you, our audience, will join us in OneShared.World. And we'd like to end with a video that was created by Danny Garcia in Los Angeles that I think in many ways tells its own story.
Every grain of sand is connected to a life force older than the continents.
The reality, interdependence is not a choice. It is our survival.
Please join us in OneShared.World. Lend your passion, your expertise,
your love,
and help our world thrive.
Together, we can surmount our challenges and succeed in our goals.